Every day, we're bombarded with noise, endless notifications, constant comparisons, and an overwhelming stream of information pulling us in every direction. It feels like our minds are running a marathon they never signed up for. But here's the thing, mental clutter isn't unique to our modern lives. Even 2,000 years ago, the Stoics faced their own version of this chaos. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." These words hold a timeless truth, offering us a path to rise above the noise and restore clarity. In this video, we're going to explore practical Stoic strategies that cut through mental overwhelm and help you detox your mind. If the weight of constant mental chatter has been holding you back, stay with me. Peace of mind is closer than you think. Picture this, you post a picture on social media, and as the likes and comments start coming in, or don't you catch yourself obsessing, why didn't they like it? Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Before you know it, a single moment spirals into hours of overthinking. Sound familiar? This is mental clutter at work. Those constant nagging thoughts that keep your mind spinning but lead nowhere productive. It's like having too many browser tabs open in your head. Everything feels urgent, yet nothing gets resolved. Mental clutter isn't just overthinking social media. It's the endless worrying about the future, replaying old conversations, or being distracted by things that don't really matter. It's the background noise in your mind that drains your focus and robs you of peace. The Stoics understood this problem deeply, even in a world without phones or endless notifications. To them, mental clutter was an obstacle, a barrier preventing clear thought, wise decisions, and that ever-elusive inner tranquility. At its core, Stoicism teaches us that much of this mental noise stems from one simple mistake: fixating on things outside of our control. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and a prominent Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about how our minds get tangled in things that ultimately don't belong to us. For instance, we don't control the opinions or actions of others, nor can we dictate what will happen tomorrow. Yet we often waste precious mental energy worrying about those exact things. The Stoics believed that focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we can't is essential to clearing mental clutter. So, instead of fretting about how others perceive you, the Stoics would say, focus on your own intentions. Did you act with kindness? Were you honest and thoughtful? If so, then you've done all that's within your power. As Seneca, another great Stoic thinker, put it, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Worrying about things outside your control not only solves nothing but adds unnecessary weight to your life. Here's where this philosophy becomes incredibly practical. Whenever you find yourself tangled in mental clutter, ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, why carry that burden? For example, let's go back to the social media scenario. You can control the effort you put into your post, the message you want to share, and how you engage with others, but you can't control how people react or whether they even notice it. That's their choice, not yours. Letting go of that external judgment helps free your mind from needless anxiety. But like most things, this is easier said than done. Mental clutter is sneaky. It often disguises itself as something important. That's why the Stoics emphasized practicing this mindset daily. It's a skill, not a switch you flip overnight. When you start to feel overwhelmed, pause and reflect. What truly deserves your attention? What aligns with your values? More often than not, you'll find that much of what's cluttering your mind doesn't deserve the space it's taking up. The beauty of Stoicism lies in its simplicity and its timelessness. This ancient philosophy reminds us that while we can't always control the world around us, we can control how we respond to it. And in doing so, we can begin to clear the fog of mental clutter, one unnecessary thought at a time. So, the next time you catch yourself overthinking or worrying about something, take a deep breath. Focus on what's within your control and let the rest go. How often do you stress about things you can't change? Maybe it's that meeting at work where you replay every word you said, wondering if you could have sounded smarter. Or perhaps it's the traffic jam that completely wrecked your morning, even though there was nothing you could do to fix it. We all do this. We stress, we overthink, and we let things beyond our control dominate our mental space. But here's the thing, what if we could let all that go? What if we could reclaim the energy we waste worrying about the uncontrollable and use it to focus on what truly matters? This is exactly where the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control comes in. At its core, it's simple but transformative. It's the idea that life can be divided into two categories. There are the things we can control and the things we can't. And according to the Stoics, our happiness and peace of mind depends on recognizing the difference. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it perfectly when he said, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever is our own doing. Beyond our power are body, property, reputation, office, and in a word, whatever is not our own doing." Let's break that down. Epictetus is telling us that the only things we truly control are our thoughts, our choices, and our actions. These are our internal responses, the way we interpret events, how we decide to act, and what we strive toward. Everything else, the opinions others have of us, the outcome of our efforts, the uncontrollable twists and turns of life, falls outside of our control. And yet, it's usually these external events, the things we can't control, that create the most mental clutter. Think about it. How often do you dwell on a problem that's already out of your hands or let fear of the future hijack your present peace of mind? The power of the dichotomy of control lies in how it forces us to zoom out and reassess where we're investing our energy. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, late for an important appointment. It's easy to get frustrated, cursing every red light and every car around you. But does that change anything? You can't control the traffic, but you can control how you respond to it. You can choose to breathe, accept the situation as it is, and focus on what you'll do once you arrive. Instead of letting that frustration spiral into more stress, you regain clarity by focusing on your own actions, your own power. The same approach applies to so many areas of life. Maybe you're nervous about an upcoming job interview. You can't control the interviewer's mood, their questions, or whether they'll hire you. But you can prepare. You can walk in with confidence, having done your research and practiced your answers. That's where your control lies, your effort, your preparation, and your mindset. The rest, it's out of your hands, so why let it take up space in your mind? Now, this isn't to say that letting go of things you can't control is easy. It's not something you master in an afternoon. It's a practice, one that requires constant self-awareness and reflection. But the more you embrace the dichotomy of control, the more you start to notice when your mind slips into worry or frustration over something external. You can catch yourself and consciously redirect your focus toward what you can influence. This isn't just a tool for managing stress, it's a roadmap to a calmer, more intentional life. By letting go of what you can't control, you create mental space for the things that actually matter. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed or stuck in a cycle of overthinking, pause and ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, then take the Stoic approach, release it. Use that energy instead to strengthen what is within your power, your thoughts, your actions, and the way you choose to show up in the world. That's where the real freedom begins. Sometimes the most exhausting battles we fight are the ones in our own minds. a single negative thought can spiral into a storm of doubt, frustration, or fear. Maybe you make a small mistake at work and suddenly your inner critic is on overdrive, labeling you as not good enough. Or perhaps you feel a wave of anxiety about something trivial, and before you know it, you're overwhelmed, stuck in a loop of what-ifs. It's tempting to believe these thoughts define us, that we asterisk our worries or our sadness. But here's where the Stoics offer a powerful alternative: the practice of cognitive detachment. Cognitive detachment is the art of creating space between yourself and your thoughts. Instead of being swept away by every emotion or idea that pops into your head, you step back, observe it, and remind yourself that you are not your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." What he's pointing to is the realization that thoughts, no matter how loud or invasive, are just visitors in your mind. They only have the power you give them. To understand this, think of your mind as a radio. Sometimes the station is playing calm, uplifting music and everything feels great. Other times the signal drifts into static or a song you don't even like starts playing. But no matter what's coming through the speakers, you are not the radio station, you're the listener. Just because a negative thought or emotion crosses your mind doesn't mean you have to internalize it and let it dictate your mood or actions. It's just background noise and you can choose to tune it out. This might sound simple, but in practice it requires two key tools: self-awareness and conscious effort. Self-awareness is the first step because you can't detach from something you haven't noticed. Often, we're so caught up in our mental chatter that we don't even realize it's happening. The next time you feel a wave of negativity or stress, pause and ask yourself, what is this thought trying to tell me? Why am I feeling this way? By naming the emotion or thought, you take the first step in separating yourself from it. For example, instead of saying, "I'm angry," you might reframe it as, "I'm noticing anger right now." That small shift in language reminds you that the feeling is something you're experiencing, not something you asterisk. Alongside self-awareness, the Stoics teach us to practice observing our thoughts without judgment, almost like a scientist observing data. Instead of labeling thoughts as good or bad, simply acknowledge them for what they are: fleeting mental events. This mindset doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending problems don't exist. On the contrary, it's about allowing thoughts to come and go without giving them more weight than they deserve. Imagine standing on the side of a busy road. Thoughts are like cars passing by. Some are sleek and positive, others are noisy and disruptive, but you don't have to jump into every car. You can simply let them pass. In today's world, where mental clutter is everywhere, this practice is more relevant than ever. Think about scrolling through your phone, a constant stream of information, opinions, and comparisons. It's easy to get sucked into every headline or post, letting them shape your mood. But here's a thought: can you step back and just notice the stream instead of diving into it? Can you observe without attaching yourself to every thought it provokes? Ultimately, cognitive detachment isn't about ignoring problems or silencing your inner voice. It's about seeing your thoughts for what they are: temporary, ever-changing, and ultimately separate from you. It's about learning to respond rather than react, to choose clarity over chaos. So, the next time your mind feels overwhelmed with negativity, take a moment to pause. Watch your thoughts like clouds drifting through the sky. Some may linger, others will pass quickly. But remember, you are the sky, not the clouds. You are the observer, not the noise, and in that awareness lies your freedom. Let's talk about one of the simplest yet most powerful Stoic tools for clearing mental clutter: journaling. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, practiced this daily. His personal writings, compiled into what we now call *meditations*, weren't intended for anyone else to read. They were simply his way of reflecting, questioning, and organizing his thoughts. In many ways, it was his nightly mental detox, a way to process the day, gain clarity, and let go of whatever didn't serve him. And today, journaling can serve the same purpose for us. Think of your mind like a cluttered desk. Throughout the day, thoughts and emotions pile up, conversations you replay over and over, tasks you forgot to do, worries about tomorrow. By the end of the day, it's no wonder you feel overwhelmed. Journaling is like sitting down at that desk, picking through the mess and deciding what to keep, what to toss, and what needs action. It's a moment of mental organization that allows you to process what's been weighing on you, clearing space for clarity and peace. One of the benefits of journaling that Marcus Aurelius understood so well is that writing down your thoughts helps reduce their power over you. When worries or frustrations stay in your head, they can feel enormous and all-encompassing. A single negative thought can loop endlessly, growing louder with repetition. But something almost magical happens when you put those thoughts into words on a page. They lose their grip. Seeing them written out, staring back at you in black and white, shrinks them. They're no longer swirling around your mind. They're right there, contained, manageable. For example, imagine you're feeling anxious about a decision you need to make. In your head, the anxiety feels overwhelming, like a fog clouding your thinking. But when you sit down to journal, you force yourself to articulate the source of that anxiety. What exactly are you worried about? What's the worst-case scenario? How likely is it to happen? Often, writing it down reveals that the issue isn't as big as it seemed. It's like turning on the light in a dark room. Suddenly, the shadows aren't as scary as they first appeared. Journaling can also help you identify patterns in your thoughts and behavior. Marcus Aurelius used his journal to examine his own flaws, challenge his assumptions, and remind himself of Stoic principles. By writing regularly, you start to see recurring themes. Are you dwelling on the same types of worries? Are you reacting to situations in a way that doesn't align with your values? This self-awareness is the first step toward change. It's not about judging yourself, but about understanding yourself more deeply so you can grow. Now, you might be wondering how to get started. The beauty of journaling is that there's no wrong way to do it. You don't need to be a skilled writer or follow a rigid structure. But here's a simple practice inspired by Stoicism. At the end of the day, take a few minutes to reflect and jot down 3 things. First, write about what went well. What are you grateful for today? This helps shift your focus away from negativity and trains your mind to notice the good. Second, write about what challenged you. Did you let anger, fear, or worry control your actions? This isn't about beating yourself up, it's about being honest and learning from your experiences. And finally, write about how you want to improve tomorrow. What small step can you take to live more in line with your values? This practice doesn't need to take more than 10 minutes, but it can transform your relationship with your thoughts. Over time, you'll find that journaling becomes a sacred space, a moment each day to pause, reflect, and detox your mind. It's a way to close the door on the chaos of the day and prepare yourself for the next with a clearer, calmer perspective. Marcus Aurelius didn't have social media, overflowing inboxes, or endless notifications vying for his attention. But even in his time, he found value in stepping back and sorting through his thoughts. If it worked for an emperor balancing the weight of an empire, imagine what it could do for you. So tonight, before bed, grab a notebook and give it a try. Write down whatever's on your mind. You might be surprised at how much lighter you feel once your thoughts are on the page, not swirling in your head. Let's consider how much of our mental clutter comes from always wanting more. A bigger house, a nicer car, the latest gadget, or even just the fleeting admiration of others. It's natural to desire things. After all, we live in a world that constantly tells us that happiness is just one purchase or accomplishment away. But here's the catch: the more we chase after these things, the more restless our minds become. Each new desire adds another layer of mental clutter, another distraction pulling us away from peace. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that true contentment doesn't come from endlessly pursuing what we don't have, but from learning to appreciate and be satisfied with what we do. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Think about that for a moment. It's not our lack of possessions or achievements that causes unhappiness. It's our insatiable craving for more. Imagine this scenario: you buy a new smartphone and at first it feels amazing. It's faster, sleeker, and has all the latest features, but after a few months that excitement fades. A new model is announced and suddenly your phone feels outdated. You start thinking, maybe I need the new one. This cycle of desire never ends because there's always something better, shinier, or newer on the horizon. Each time you give in to it, the satisfaction is temporary and the mental burden grows. You're no longer enjoying what you have because your mind is fixated on what's missing. The Stoics would argue that the real problem here isn't the object itself, it's our attachment to it. When we tie our happiness to external things, we give away our peace of mind. Why? Because external things are always fleeting and they're never fully in our control. They can be lost, broken, or replaced. Instead, the Stoics taught us to practice moderating our desires and focusing on what's within. They encouraged us to ask, do I truly need this, or is this desire just noise distracting me from what really matters? Take a moment to reflect on the things you already have. Do you have a roof over your head, enough food to eat, clothes to wear? For the Stoics, these basics were enough to live a content and meaningful life. They recognized that once our basic needs are met, anything beyond that is a bonus, not a requirement for happiness. Epictetus famously advised, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The fewer things we feel we need to be whole, the lighter and freer our minds will be. Let's bring this into a practical perspective. Suppose you're tempted to buy yet another item you don't truly need, an expensive pair of shoes, the latest piece of tech, or a luxury vacation. Before making the purchase, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what am I really looking for here? Will this bring lasting happiness, or is it just an attempt to fill a temporary void? Often we chase material things as a way to distract ourselves from something deeper: boredom, insecurity, or a lack of purpose. But no object can truly fill that void. That's why the Stoics placed so much emphasis on cultivating inner wealth, qualities like gratitude, wisdom, and self-control. Practicing gratitude is a powerful first step towards simplifying your desires. Instead of focusing on what you lack, take time each day to reflect on what you already have. Maybe it's the warmth of sunlight streaming through your window, a meaningful conversation with a friend, or the simple pleasure of a good meal. These moments, though small, are deeply fulfilling when we pay attention to them. By shifting your focus to the present and practicing gratitude, you begin to quiet the constant noise of want. Ultimately, simplifying your desires is about freeing your mind from unnecessary distractions. It's not about rejecting all possessions or denying yourself comfort, it's about finding balance. When you stop chasing more and start appreciating enough, you create space for what truly matters: deeper connections, purposeful living, and lasting peace of mind. So the next time you find yourself caught up in the endless pursuit of more, take a step back. Ask yourself, do I really need this, or can I find contentment right here, right now, with all that I already have? The answer might not only surprise you, but also set you free. Have you ever noticed how much time your mind spends anywhere but the present moment? Maybe you're replaying something embarrassing you said last week, or you're stuck worrying about how tomorrow's meeting will go. It's as if your thoughts are constantly pulling you backward into regrets or forward into fears, leaving little room to actually be where you are right now. And yet, this exact moment, the one happening right here, right now, is the only one you truly have. The Stoics understood this deeply, and their teachings on staying present align closely with what we now call mindfulness. Seneca, one of the most influential Stoic thinkers, reflected often on our relationship with time. He wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." How much time has been wasted in pointless grief, foolish pleasure, greedy desire, and social amusements? How little of your own life belongs to you. His words remind us of a powerful truth. Life is fleeting, and too often we squander it by living in the past or the future instead of the present. When we dwell on yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's uncertainties, we rob ourselves of the one thing that truly matters, the here and now. The Stoics practiced present moment awareness as a cornerstone of their philosophy. They believed that by grounding yourself in the moment, you free your mind from unnecessary clutter and gain clarity to focus on what you can control. After all, the past is unchangeable and the future is unpredictable. The only influence you have is over how you choose to live this moment, and in this choice lies your power. Let's bring this into a modern context. Think about the last time you found yourself caught in a loop of worrying about the future. Maybe you had a big decision to make and your mind was filled with what-ifs. What if I choose the wrong path? What if everything goes wrong? Or on the flip side, reflect on when you've been stuck in the past. Maybe you replayed a painful memory, wishing you could go back and change it. How much energy did those thoughts take, and what did they really accomplish? Most likely, they left you feeling anxious, drained, or powerless. Staying present, on the other hand, allows you to break free from this endless cycle. Modern mindfulness practices echo this same principle. Techniques like deep breathing, meditation, or simply paying attention to your senses can anchor you in the present moment. When practiced consistently, mindfulness teaches your mind to focus on what's happening right now instead of being distracted by the endless chatter of past regrets and future worries. For example, the next time you feel overwhelmed, try this simple exercise. Pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Notice the air filling your lungs. What does it feel like? Close your eyes and tune into the sounds around you. What do you hear? These small acts of awareness can help ground you, pulling your attention back to the present. The link between Stoicism and mindfulness lies in their shared emphasis on intentional living. Both encourage us to live fully in the present by letting go of the weight of time, the regrets we carry from the past, and the pressure we place on the future. The more you practice this, the more you'll begin to notice when your mind drifts away and gently guide it back to the now. It's not about silencing your thoughts entirely, but rather learning not to get caught up in their pull. So let me ask you, how often do you pause and reflect on where your mind is spending its time? Is it dwelling on something you can't change or worrying about something that hasn't happened yet? If so, take a moment to reclaim your presence. As Seneca reminds us, our time on this earth is limited and precious. The best way to honor it is to live fully in the moment. After all, this present moment, it's not just where life happens. It is life. Now, let's talk about a counterintuitive but incredibly effective Stoic practice, negative visualization. At first glance, this might sound strange. Why would anyone actively imagine the worst-case scenario? Isn't that the exact opposite of what we're taught when it comes to positive thinking? But here's the brilliance of this Stoic technique. By purposefully confronting your fears in your mind, you strip them of their power. Instead of letting your worries spiral out of control, negative visualization forces you to face them head-on, bringing clarity, perspective, and calm. In essence, negative visualization involves taking a moment to imagine what might happen if things went completely wrong. For example, if you're afraid of failure at work, you might visualize the project falling apart, your boss's disappointment, and even the possibility of losing your job. This might sound anxiety-inducing at first, but here's what happens when you approach it the Stoic way. Instead of getting swept up in fear, you start to realize that even the worst-case scenario is rarely as catastrophic as it initially seems. You remind yourself that you are resilient, that you've faced difficulties before, and that even if everything went wrong, life would still go on. Seneca, a master of this practice, once said, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." What he means is that when you mentally prepare for challenges, you reduce their ability to overwhelm you. Much of the anxiety we feel in life doesn't come from events themselves, it comes from the uncertainty surrounding them. When you practice negative visualization, you replace vague, looming fears with concrete possibilities. You're essentially saying, okay, what's the worst that can happen? How would I deal with it? This clarity shifts your mindset from one of helplessness to one of preparation. Let's bring this into a modern example: public speaking, one of the most common fears out there. Imagine you're about to give a big presentation, and the thought of standing in front of a room full of people makes your heart race. Instead of avoiding the fear, use negative visualization. Picture the worst-case scenario. You fumble over your words, your slides stop working, or someone asks a question you can't answer. At first, these thoughts might make you uncomfortable. But as you sit with them, you start to see that even if these things happened, it wouldn't be the end of the world. You'd learn, adapt, and move forward. This exercise doesn't increase fear. It reduces it by showing you that you're capable of handling far more than you think. Another powerful benefit of negative visualization is how it shifts your perspective. By imagining life without certain comforts or people, you begin to appreciate them more deeply. The Stoics often practiced this through a thought exercise called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. For instance, they might reflect on the possibility of losing their possessions, status, or even loved ones, not to wallow in despair but to foster gratitude for what they currently had. When you imagine life without something you cherish, you see it in a new light. That morning coffee you take for granted becomes a small luxury. That friend you haven't called in weeks suddenly feels like a gift. And here's the most liberating part of negative visualization. It helps you let go of the illusion of control. So much of our mental clutter comes from trying to control outcomes that are beyond our reach. But when you imagine the worst-case scenario and come to terms with it, you free yourself from that grip. You accept that while you can influence events, you can't control every outcome, and that's okay. This acceptance creates a sense of calm, a mental detox that clears away unnecessary worries. So the next time you find yourself paralyzed by fear or overwhelmed by anxiety, take a moment to sit with your worst-case scenario. Imagine it in detail. What would it look like? How would you respond? Chances are you'll realize it's not as scary as you thought. And more importantly, you'll realize that you have the strength to handle it. Negative visualization isn't about pessimism or dwelling on doom. It's about preparation, perspective, and ultimately, peace of mind. It's one of the most powerful tools the Stoics have given us, and when practiced regularly, it can help you navigate life with clarity and resilience. How much of what you do every day is motivated by the need for approval from others? Think about it for a moment. Maybe it's posting on social media and anxiously watching the likes roll in or don't. Perhaps it's saying yes to something you didn't really want to do, just to avoid disappointing someone. Or maybe it's staying quiet in a meeting because you're worried about how your ideas might be judged. Seeking validation from others is something we all experience, but when it becomes a habit, it creates a constant stream of mental noise, a voice in your head questioning, Am I good enough? Do they like me? Did I do that right? And that voice can be exhausting. The Stoics understood the danger of letting other people's opinions dictate your peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." In other words, we seem to trust the judgment of others about our lives more than we trust ourselves. Why is that? Why do we look outward for validation instead of inward for self-assurance? One reason is that external validation feels good, at least temporarily. When someone praises you or approves of your work, it feels like confirmation that you're on the right track. But here's the problem: when you rely on others to define your worth, you give them power over your peace of mind. Their opinion becomes the measure of your success, happiness, or value. And because opinions are unpredictable and can change on a whim, that foundation is incredibly shaky. It's like building a house on quicksand. It can't hold you up for long. Take social media, for example. You post a photo or share an accomplishment, hoping for likes and comments. When the feedback is positive, you feel great. But what happens when it's not? Do you start questioning yourself, wondering if you're not interesting, good-looking, or successful enough? This constant need for validation creates mental clutter because it shifts your focus outward, distracting you from what you think and feel about yourself. The Stoics would argue that this is a trap, a distraction from what truly matters. So, how do we let go of this need for external validation? The Stoics believed it starts with redefining your source of approval. Instead of chasing recognition from others, they encouraged cultivating self-respect by aligning your actions with your values. Marcus Aurelius also said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." What he's saying here is that the only opinion you truly need to care about is your own. Are you living in a way that feels authentic to you? Are you acting with integrity and purpose? If the answer is yes, then no one else's opinion should matter. Here's a practical exercise to try. The next time you find yourself seeking validation from others, pause and ask yourself, whose approval am I trying to gain and why? Reflect on whether their opinion truly impacts your life or whether it's just a habit of chasing external reassurance. Then shift the focus inward. How do you feel about the action you're taking? Are you proud of it? Does it align with who you want to be? By redirecting the need for validation inward, you begin to build a stronger, more self-assured foundation, one that isn't so easily shaken by the opinions of others. Letting go of external validation is challenging, especially in a world that constantly pushes us to seek it. But when you start valuing your own opinion above all else, you'll notice a profound shift. Your mind feels lighter because it's no longer cluttered by worries about what others think. You gain clarity and confidence as you focus on living in alignment with your own values. And most importantly, you reclaim your sense of self, realizing that your worth isn't determined by the approval of others. It's something you carry within you. Ask yourself, are you living to impress others, or are you living to honor your own authenticity? The answer can change everything. In today's world, silence is rare. There's always something competing for our attention: notifications buzzing, music playing, endless conversations, or the hum of background noise from a television or podcast. Many of us have grown so accustomed to this constant noise that the idea of silence feels uncomfortable, even unsettling. But for the Stoics, silence wasn't something to avoid, it was something to embrace. They believed that silence and solitude were essential for clearing the mind, finding perspective, and reconnecting with what truly matters. The Stoics valued silence because it creates space for reflection. Seneca, one of the most eloquent Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "Silence at the proper season is wisdom and better than any speech." In other words, silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's an opportunity for deeper thought, for introspection. When we're constantly bombarded by external chatter from the outside world and even from our own minds, it becomes nearly impossible to think clearly. Silence allows us to pause, step back, and observe our own thoughts without judgment or distraction. But let's be honest, adopting silence in our modern lives can feel like a challenge. We live in a time when being busy is celebrated and stillness can almost feel lazy. We fill every empty moment with something, scrolling through social media, streaming a show, or listening to music or podcast. And while there's nothing wrong with staying engaged or entertained, this endless stream of input comes at a cost. It leaves little room for stillness, for quiet moments to process our thoughts, let our minds rest, and truly detox from the constant stimulation. Take a moment to reflect on this. When was the last time you intentionally sat in silence, not scrolling through your phone or mentally planning your day, but simply sitting and being asterisk? For many of us, the answer might be, I don't remember. And that's exactly why the Stoic approach to silence is so powerful in today's world. By carving out moments of intentional silence, we create an oasis for our minds, a chance to breathe, declutter, and reconnect with ourselves. So how can you incorporate the value of silence into your daily life? Start small. Dedicate just 5 or 10 minutes each day to being silent. Find a quiet corner of your home, step outside, or even sit in your car. During this time, resist the urge to check your phone or distract yourself. Instead, simply sit and notice what's around you. Take in the sounds of nature, the subtle hum of your surroundings, or even the rhythm of your own breath. If your mind starts to wander, which it probably will, gently bring your focus back to the present moment. These pockets of silence can act as a reset button, giving your mind a break from the constant noise. In fact, many of history's greatest thinkers, from Marcus Aurelius to modern-day innovators, understood the importance of silence. They carved out time for solitude, not to escape the world, but to gain clarity within it. And when you think about it, silence isn't really about avoiding noise. It's about creating intentional space to reflect on what's meaningful. It's about quieting the external chaos so you can hear your own thoughts and make clear, deliberate choices. Another way to embrace silence is by practicing the concept of speaking less. The Stoics believed that unnecessary chatter not only made our minds noisier, but also distracted us from the wisdom that comes in stillness. Before speaking, consider whether your words are necessary or helpful. Practicing restraint in conversation allows for more mindful communication and strengthens our ability to listen, not just to others but to ourselves. Ultimately, silence isn't just an absence of sound. It's a tool for presence, clarity, and peace. By embracing small moments of quiet in your daily life, you'll begin to notice a shift. Your mind will feel lighter, your thoughts clearer, and your sense of self more grounded. So, as you move through the busyness of modern life, take a cue from the Stoics. Seek out silence, even for a moment. In doing so, you'll create the mental space to listen not to the noise of the world, but to the calm wisdom within you. Let's face it, modern life is designed to keep us comfortable. We have climate-controlled homes, instant access to food, entertainment at our fingertips, and countless conveniences to make life easier. And while there's nothing wrong with enjoying these comforts, they come with an unintended side effect. They make us fear losing them. Think about it. How often do we worry about what would happen if we didn't have all these luxuries? What if we lost our job, faced financial hardship, or had to give up the lifestyle we've grown so used to? This fear of discomfort, of the unknown, creates a kind of mental clutter. It feeds anxiety and keeps us trapped in the what-ifs, preventing us from fully embracing the present. The Stoics, always ahead of their time, understood this dynamic well. Their solution: practicing voluntary discomfort. Seneca, one of the most well-known Stoic philosophers, often advised his followers to periodically live as if they were experiencing poverty, even if they weren't. In one of his letters, he wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" Seneca's point wasn't to punish himself or adopt a life of permanent deprivation. Instead, he wanted to prove to himself that he could handle discomfort, that he didn't need luxury to survive or find peace. By doing this, he weakened the power that fear of hardship could hold over him. This practice of voluntary discomfort is just as relevant today as it was in Seneca's time, if not more so. Our modern comforts often create a baseline of dependency that amplifies our fears. For instance, consider your reliance on your smartphone. It's become almost like an extension of yourself, a source of connection, information, and entertainment. But what happens if your phone dies, if you lose it, or if you spend even a few hours without it? For many, that would spark a sense of panic or unease. This isn't because the phone itself is a necessity, but because we've grown so accustomed to its convenience that the idea of being without it feels unnerving. Practicing voluntary discomfort challenges this dependency and helps you build resilience. It's a way to confront your fears in a controlled and intentional way, reducing their grip on your mind. Let's use a practical example: fasting. In today's world, food is abundant, and the idea of skipping a meal or even a day of eating can seem extreme. But voluntarily going without food for a short period teaches you two important lessons. First, it shows you that hunger, while unpleasant, is manageable. You discover that being a little uncomfortable is not the end of the world. Second, it helps you appreciate the food you do have. The next meal you eat feels more meaningful, not because it's different, but because you've experienced what it's like to go without. Another simple way to practice voluntary discomfort is by stepping out of your comfort zone in small but intentional ways. Could you take cold showers for a week? Sleep on the floor instead of your bed for a night or two. Walk or bike instead of driving to work. These practices may seem minor, but they have a profound psychological effect. Each time you willingly expose yourself to discomfort, you remind yourself that you're stronger than you think. You learn that you can endure hardship, and in doing so, you become less anxious about what life might throw your way. You stop fearing the unknown because you've already proven to yourself that you can handle it. This doesn't mean you should abandon modern comforts entirely. The point isn't to live in a state of constant deprivation. It's to remind yourself that you could if you needed to. By practicing voluntary discomfort, you free your mind from the grip of what-if anxiety. You become more adaptable, more grateful, and ultimately more at peace with life's uncertainties. The next time you catch yourself worrying about losing something, a job, a lifestyle, or a convenience, ask yourself, am I so afraid of discomfort that it's taking up space in my mind? Then take a page from Seneca's playbook. Embrace the discomfort, even for a short time. You might just discover that the thing you feared was never as overwhelming as it seemed. Life is full of challenges, unexpected setbacks, difficult situations, and moments of uncertainty often feel like heavy weights pressing down on our minds. When faced with these obstacles, it's easy to slip into negative thought patterns. Why me? Why now? Why this? These questions can loop endlessly in our heads, creating frustration, resentment, and mental clutter. But what if there were a way to reframe those challenges, to see them not as burdens but as opportunities? This is where the Stoic concept of *ama fati*, or the love of fate, comes into play. It's not just about accepting what happens to us, it's about embracing it fully, even loving it as an integral part of our journey. The idea of *ama fati* is one of the most profound and liberating principles in Stoicism. It teaches us to view everything that happens in our lives, both the good and the bad, as necessary and meaningful. Instead of wishing that things were different, we choose to love them exactly as they are. Marcus Aurelius put it beautifully when he wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." In other words, just as a fire turns fuel into heat and light, we can transform the obstacles in our lives into sources of strength and growth. But how does this work in practice? Let's say you've recently lost your job. On the surface, this might seem like a purely negative event, a source of stress, uncertainty, and fear. It's natural to feel those emotions, but from a Stoic perspective, *amor fati* invites us to look deeper. Instead of focusing solely on what you've lost, you ask yourself, what opportunities does this create? What lessons can I learn from this experience? Perhaps losing that job pushes you to pursue a career path that's more aligned with your passions. Maybe it teaches you resilience, adaptability, or the importance of financial planning. By reframing the situation, you clear away the negativity and make space for growth. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. The Stoics didn't deny the hardships of life, they faced them head-on. What they understood, though, is that we have a choice in how we respond to those hardships. We can resist them, resent them, and let them dominate our minds, or we can accept them and use them as fuel for inner development. *amor fati* is like mental alchemy. It turns the lead of life's difficulties into the gold of opportunity. Think about a challenge you've recently faced. Maybe it was a conflict in a relationship, a health issue, or a major disappointment. Take a moment to reflect. How did you respond to that challenge? Did you stew in frustration or try to avoid dealing with it? Or did you take a step back and ask yourself what this experience might be teaching you? If you haven't already done so, try reframing it now. How might this obstacle be an opportunity in disguise? What strengths did it reveal in you, or what lessons might it carry? The more you practice *amor fati*, the lighter your mental load becomes. Instead of fighting against reality, you flow with it. Instead of seeing setbacks as barriers, you see them as stepping stones. And here's the surprising gift. When you learn to love your fate, you free yourself from the endless cycle of what ifs and why me. Your mind becomes clearer, stronger, and more focused on what you can do rather than what you wish you could change. So the next time life throws something unexpected your way, take a deep breath and remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. What stands in the way becomes the way. Embrace the challenge, love the process, and trust that everything, yes, even this, has a role to play in your growth. After all, your ability to transform obstacles into opportunities is one of the greatest mental detox strategies you'll ever find. Have you ever noticed how much mental space is taken up by things that don't truly matter? Commitments we don't care about, endless to-do lists, and thoughts that weigh us down instead of lifting us up. It's as if our brains are trying to juggle 100 things at once, yet none of them feel particularly meaningful. This is where the concept of mental minimalism comes in, and it ties beautifully with Stoic philosophy. Just like physical minimalism encourages us to clear out the clutter in our homes, mental minimalism is about decluttering our minds, letting go of unnecessary thoughts, obligations, and worries to make room for what really matters. The Stoics believed that a simpler mind is a clearer mind. They understood that when you focus only on what's essential, you can live with greater purpose and peace. Epictetus expressed this perfectly when he said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He wasn't telling us to stop thinking or to avoid learning. He was reminding us that we don't have to chase every opportunity, every thought, or every external expectation. A cluttered mind, much like a cluttered room, leads to overwhelm, but a minimalist mind, a mind that holds only what is valuable, creates clarity and focus. So, how do we apply mental minimalism in a practical way? It starts with prioritizing your values. Ask yourself, what truly matters to me? What brings meaning and fulfillment to my life? For the Stoics, these answers often centered on living virtuously, acting with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. By focusing on your core values, you can start to filter out the noise. Not every obligation or thought deserves your energy. For example, if one of your values is spending quality time with loved ones, then does it really make sense to say yes to every invitation or project that pulls you away from them? When you're clear on your values, decision-making becomes simpler. You can let go of commitments that don't serve you and invest more fully in the things that do. Another crucial strategy for mental minimalism is learning to say no, something many of us struggle with. In our desire to please others or avoid conflict, we often agree to things we don't actually want to do, adding unnecessary stress to our lives. But every yes to something unimportant is a no to something meaningful. When you say no to obligations that don't align with your values, you protect your mental energy and create space for what truly matters. The next time you're faced with a decision, pause and reflect. Does this align with my priorities? Am I saying yes out of obligation or because it genuinely contributes to my life? Saying no isn't selfish, it's an act of self-respect. Mental minimalism also involves simplifying your internal world, your thoughts. Often, our minds are cluttered with worries, regrets, and endless what-ifs. The Stoics remind us that much of this mental clutter is unnecessary. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." By focusing on what's within your control and letting go of the rest, you immediately reduce the mental load. For example, if you find yourself overthinking how others perceive you, ask yourself, is this something I can control? If the answer is no, release it. The same applies to regrets about the past or fears about the future. These thoughts serve no purpose other than to steal your peace. A practical way to declutter your mind is to create daily rituals. Journaling, for instance, can help you organize your thoughts and let go of unnecessary worries. Writing down your priorities for the day ensures that your mental energy is directed toward what matters most. Another powerful technique is practicing mindfulness or meditation. By focusing on the present moment, you quiet the constant chatter in your mind and create a sense of calm. Ultimately, mental minimalism isn't about having no thoughts or commitment. It's about focusing on fewer, more meaningful ones. It's about creating a life that reflects your values, where your energy is invested in what truly matters, and where your mind feels light and clear instead of burdened and overstimulated. So take a moment to ask yourself, what can I let go of? What commitments, thoughts, or distractions no longer serve me? By embracing mental minimalism, you'll not only experience greater clarity, but also a deeper sense of peace, purpose, and freedom. Let's shift our focus to one of the simplest yet most transformative Stoic practices, gratitude. In a world that constantly tells us to chase more success, more possessions, more recognition, it's easy to overlook the abundance already present in our lives. But the Stoics, with their timeless wisdom, remind us that true happiness doesn't come from acquiring more. It comes from appreciating what we already have. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, often emphasized the power of gratitude. He wrote, "Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart." For Seneca, gratitude wasn't just polite acknowledgement, it was a way of living, a lens through which to see the world. Gratitude shifts your focus. Instead of dwelling on what's missing or what's gone wrong, it directs your attention to the blessings, however small, that are right in front of you. And that shift can cleanse your mind of the clutter created by dissatisfaction, envy, or longing. Let's take a moment to explore why gratitude is such an effective tool for mental clarity. Picture your mind as a glass of water. Each negative thought, each complaint, worry, or unmet desire is like a drop of ink muddying the water. Over time, the glass becomes cloudy, making it harder to focus, harder to see clearly. Practicing gratitude is like adding fresh, clean water to the glass. It doesn't erase all the challenges of life, but it dilutes their power, allowing you to see the good that's already present. Epictetus, another prominent Stoic philosopher, believed that gratitude begins with recognizing the simple blessings of life, the things we often take for granted. He encouraged us to reflect daily on the ordinary gifts we enjoy, such as the ability to breathe, the warmth of the sun, or the company of loved ones. When we stop and truly appreciate these small joys, we begin to realize how much we already have and how little we actually need. This practice doesn't just boost your mood, it declutters your mind from the constant craving for more, simplifying your thoughts and helping you focus on the present. So, how can you incorporate this into your daily life in a practical way? One of the easiest and most impactful habits is to write down 3 things you're grateful for every day. This can be done in the morning to set a positive tone for the day, or in the evening as a way to reflect before you rest. These don't have to be monumental achievements or life-changing events. In fact, the smaller and simpler, the better. Maybe it's the sound of birds outside your window, a kind word from a stranger, or the feeling of a warm cup of coffee in your hand. What matters is the act of noticing and acknowledging these moments. Over time, this practice rewires your brain to naturally seek out the positive. Instead of focusing on what's wrong or what's missing, you develop the ability to see life through a lens of appreciation. And this gratitude, in turn, creates a sense of contentment and peace, a mental clarity that allows you to navigate life's challenges with greater ease. The beauty of gratitude is that it's accessible to everyone, no matter your circumstances. You don't need resources, status, or external validation to practice it. All it takes is a moment of intentional reflection. So today, start small. Take out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and list 3 things you're grateful for. Pause and really let those feelings sink in. Notice how even this simple act begins to lighten your mental load. As Seneca and Epictetus taught us, life's greatest rewards aren't found in chasing what we lack, but in cherishing what we have. Gratitude isn't just a practice, it's a mindset, a way of life that clears away mental clutter and brings you closer to lasting peace. So, what are you grateful for today? Write it down, reflect on it, and let it transform the way you see the world. At the heart of Stoic philosophy are 4 timeless virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. These aren't abstract ideals meant to sit on a shelf. They're deeply practical tools that can guide us toward a clearer, more focused mind. When life feels overwhelming and our thoughts are racing in every direction, these virtues act as a compass, pointing us back toward what truly matters. By aligning our actions and decisions with these principles, we remove much of the mental noise that comes from uncertainty, distraction, and disarray. Let's start with wisdom, the virtue that teaches us how to discern what is true and what is important. Wisdom is about clear thinking, making thoughtful choices based on reason rather than reacting impulsively to fleeting emotions or external pressures. Imagine standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. Wisdom helps you step back, assess the options, and choose based on what aligns with your values and long-term goals. In terms of mental decluttering, wisdom reduces anxiety caused by uncertainty. When you cultivate wisdom, you filter out irrelevant or unhelpful thoughts, focusing instead on meaningful and purposeful action. For example, if you're agonizing over a decision, ask yourself, what do I know to be true? What's within my control here? This kind of clear, rational thinking instantly quiets the chaos of mental overanalysis. Next is courage, the virtue of facing challenges with strength and determination. Courage doesn't mean living without fear, it means acting in spite of it. Often, our mental clutter stems from avoiding difficult tasks or situations. We procrastinate, replay worst-case scenarios in our heads, and let fear of failure paralyze us. Courage cuts through that noise by reminding us to take action, even when it feels uncomfortable. Maybe you've been putting off a hard conversation or delaying a project because of self-doubt. Courage calls you to step up. When you confront your fears head-on, that mental weight you've been carrying starts to lift. You realize the act of avoidance was far more stressful than the challenge itself. Then we come to temperance, the virtue of self-discipline and balance. In a world of constant distractions, temperance is your safeguard against overindulgence and excess. It's about knowing when enough is enough, whether that's setting boundaries with work, resisting the urge to binge on social media, or practicing moderation in your daily habits. Mental clutter often arises when we lack discipline, letting our impulses dictate our behavior. The result is overstimulation, regret, and a scattered mind. Temperance acts as a calming force. It invites you to slow down, focus, and create structure in your life. Think of temperance as your inner gatekeeper, asking, "Do I really need this right now?" This applies not only to external behaviors but also to thoughts. When your mind starts spinning over hypotheticals or distractions, temperance reminds you to return to balance. Finally, we have justice, the virtue of fairness and integrity. Justice isn't just about how we treat others. It's about living in alignment with our values and contributing meaningfully to the world around us. Much of our mental clutter comes from internal conflicts when we act in ways that don't align with who we want to be. For example, saying or doing something that goes against your moral compass creates guilt and mental tension. Justice encourages us to act with fairness and compassion, both toward ourselves and others. When you live justly, your mind feels lighter because you're no longer wrestling with the weight of dishonesty, resentment, or regret. Justice also reminds us to think beyond ourselves, to focus on contributing positively to our communities. In doing so, we shift our focus away from petty worries and toward a greater sense of purpose. Together, these four virtues, wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, form the foundation of a decluttered mind. They guide us through life's chaos, helping us cut through distractions, face challenges, and live in harmony with ourselves and others. Whenever your mind feels noisy or unsettled, ask yourself, am I acting with wisdom? Am I showing courage? Am I practicing temperance? Am I being just? These questions are like a reset button, helping you realign with what really matters. By embodying these virtues, you'll find that mental clarity isn't something distant or out of reach. It's simply a matter of returning to the principles that anchor us. Imagine for a moment that your time is limited, not in some vague, far-off way, but truly limited down to your last days, perhaps even your last hours. What would you do differently? What would matter to you in those final moments? It's a heavy thought, but also a liberating one. This is the Stoic practice of memento mori or remember that you will die. Far from being morbid, it's a profound meditation that helps us strip away the trivial concerns of life and focus on what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius captured the essence of memento mori beautifully when he wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. The Stoics didn't encourage us to ponder mortality to frighten us or make us despair. Instead, they saw it as a tool for clarity. By reflecting on the brevity of life, we're reminded of its preciousness. The things we often obsess over, petty arguments, material possessions, or endless to-do lists, suddenly lose their weight when viewed through the lens of our finite time. And what's left, the people we love, the values we live by, the moments of joy and connection that make life meaningful. This practice may feel counterintuitive in a culture that often avoids discussions of mortality. We're conditioned to prolong youth, to distract ourselves from the reality of aging and death, and to fill our lives with busyness as if we have endless time. But the Stoics understood something we tend to forget. By confronting the reality of death, we actually learn how to live. When you embrace the impermanence of life, you gain a sharper focus and a deeper appreciation for each day. Let's consider how memento mori can impact the way we approach decision-making. How often do we waste time agonizing over things that, in the grand scheme of things, don't matter? Maybe you're caught up in office drama, endlessly debating what someone said or did. Or perhaps you've been putting off pursuing something meaningful, a dream, a relationship, or even just taking a much-deserved break because you assume there will always be time later. But when you reflect on life's brevity, these choices become clearer. Does this situation truly deserve your energy? If today were your last, how would you spend it? Suddenly, the petty squabbles and endless distractions seem far less significant. Memento mori also cultivates gratitude. Imagine how differently you'd approach your daily life if you treated each moment as a gift. That morning coffee you sip absent-mindedly, the hug from a loved one, even the tasks you often dread, each would take on a new meaning if you knew how fleeting they were. By meditating on mortality, we're reminded not to take these moments for granted. It shifts our mindset from complacency to appreciation. Life, with all its imperfections and challenges, is still a remarkable thing to experience. To make this practice a part of your life, start small. Each day, take a moment to reflect on the idea that your time is limited. You might write it in a journal or simply remind yourself, I could leave life right now. This doesn't mean living in fear of death. It means living with intention. Let this thought guide your actions. Are you spending your time in ways that align with your values? Are you prioritizing what matters most to you? Are you present in the moments that truly count? Memento mori isn't about dwelling on the inevitability of death. It's about freeing yourself from the illusion of endless time. It's about living so fully and authentically that, when the end does come, you can face it without regret, knowing you've truly lived. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. So, the question is, if you truly embraced the brevity of life, how would it change the way you live today? Let's talk about one of the biggest contributors to mental clutter, emotional reactivity. How often have you let anger, frustration, or sadness spiral out of control, hijacking your thoughts for hours or even days? It could be something as small as a rude comment from someone or as big as a personal setback, but the result is the same. Your emotions take over, filling your mind with chaos and leaving little room for clarity or calm. The Stoics believed that while emotions are a natural part of being human, it's how we respond to them that makes the difference. And when we master this response, we free ourselves from so much unnecessary mental noise. One of the most powerful ideas that the Stoics shared comes from Epictetus, who said, "It is not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." In other words, it's not what happens to us that creates emotional turmoil, it's the meaning we assign to those events. Think about it. Two people could face the exact same situation, say being stuck in traffic. One person might feel completely overwhelmed, fuming with frustration, convinced that their entire day is ruined. Meanwhile, the other person might take a deep breath and see the traffic as an opportunity to slow down, listen to music, or reflect on their day. The event itself hasn't changed, but their interpretation of it makes all the difference. This distinction is key to avoiding emotional reactivity. The Stoics understood that while we can't always control what happens around us, we can control how we choose to interpret and respond. And this isn't just about suppressing emotions, it's about learning to pause, reflect, and approach situations with reason rather than raw reaction. By practicing emotional discipline, we reduce the mental clutter caused by overreactions, regrets, and the emotional baggage that often follows impulsive responses. So, how can we put this into practice? One of the most effective Stoic techniques is something incredibly simple but surprisingly powerful: pausing before reacting. When you feel a strong emotion rising, whether it's anger, fear, or even excitement, commit to taking a moment before you respond. This could mean counting to 5, taking a few deep breaths, or even stepping away from the situation for a brief walk. This pause creates a gap between the stimulus and your reaction, giving you time to assess the situation more rationally. For example, imagine someone criticizes you in a way that feels unfair. Your immediate instinct might be to snap back defensively or let feelings of anger and resentment fester. But by pausing, you give yourself the space to consider: is their criticism accurate or worth addressing? Is it coming from a place of their own stress or misunderstanding? Do you really need to respond at all? Often, you'll find that by not reacting immediately, you gain a sense of control over the situation and over your emotions. Another tool the Stoics practiced is reframing. This means consciously choosing to shift your perspective on a situation. Let's say a close friend cancels plans at the last minute. Instead of feeling hurt or offended, you could reframe the situation. Maybe they're overwhelmed and need a break. Or maybe their cancellation gives you unexpected free time to focus on something you really enjoy. Reframing doesn't mean ignoring your feelings. It means actively choosing an interpretation that serves you rather than one that harms you. Journaling can also be a key practice to help process emotional reactions. At the end of the day, reflect on moments when you felt emotionally reactive. What triggered you? How did you interpret the situation? And how might you have responded differently? This kind of self-examination helps you identify patterns and equips you to handle future challenges with more composure. Ultimately, avoiding emotional reactivity isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about staying grounded. The Stoics teach us that emotional disturbances often arise not from the world itself, but from the stories we tell ourselves about it. By pausing, reframing, and cultivating emotional discipline, you can quiet much of the mental clutter that comes from unchecked reactions. As Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. When you learn to master your emotions, you unlock a level of clarity and peace that lets you navigate the ups and downs of life with resilience and grace. Let me ask you this: how often do you take a moment at the end of your day to truly reflect? Not just to replay the events of the day out of habit or worry, but to intentionally think about what went well, what didn't, and what you can take away from it. In the fast pace of modern life, it's easy to fall into bed exhausted, consumed by mental clutter, and already preoccupied with tomorrow's to-do list. But what if you could end each day with clarity and a sense of purpose? The Stoics strongly believed in the importance of daily reflection, a practice they used not only to detox their minds but to actively grow in wisdom and virtue. Seneca wrote about this in his letters, describing how he would review his day each evening. He said, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I have done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This wasn't about self-criticism or nitpicking. It was about cultivating self-awareness and accountability. To the Stoics, reflection was a way to align their actions with their values and to constantly strive toward becoming a better version of themselves. So how does this work in practice? Start by setting aside just a few minutes each evening. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. This is your time to pause, take a breath, and turn your focus inward. The goal is to step back and review your day almost as if you were observing it from the outside. To guide this process, you can ask yourself 3 simple but powerful questions. What did I do well? What could I have done better, and what will I strive to improve tomorrow? Let's break these down. First, asterisk, what did I do well? Asterisk, by starting with this positive question, you cultivate a sense of gratitude and self-encouragement. Maybe you stayed calm during a stressful situation or completed a task you'd been procrastinating on. Maybe you offered a kind word to someone who needed it or took care of your health by exercising or eating well. Acknowledging these victories, no matter how small, helps you build a sense of progress and reinforces positive behavior. Next, asterisk, what could I have done better? Asterisk, this isn't about beating yourself up or dwelling on mistakes, it's about learning and growing. Did you lose your temper? Did you let fear or laziness prevent you from taking action? Did you spend time on things that don't align with your priorities? Be honest with yourself, but also be compassionate. The point of this question is not to dwell in regret, but to identify areas for improvement so you can approach tomorrow with intention. And finally, asterisk, what will I strive to improve tomorrow? Asterisk, this forward-looking question helps you take what you've learned and turn it into action. Maybe you'll aim to listen more actively in conversations, spend less time on distractions, or approach a challenging task with courage. By setting these small, actionable goals, you go to bed with a sense of purpose and enter the next day with clarity. Daily reflection is like giving your mind a reset, a way to let go of what no longer serves you and focus on what does. It clears the mental clutter that builds up throughout the day and replaces it with insight, gratitude, and determination. Over time, this practice becomes a powerful tool for growth. You start to notice patterns in your behavior, understand yourself more deeply, and make more conscious choices in how you live. If you're new to this practice, consider writing your reflections in a journal. There's something about putting your thoughts down on paper that makes them feel more concrete. Plus, over time, you'll have a record of your growth, a reminder of how far you've come and the progress you've made. The beauty of daily reflection lies in its simplicity. It doesn't require fancy tools or hours of time, just a willingness to pause and look inward. And when you make it a habit, you'll find that those few minutes each evening can transform the way you approach your days. Because as the Stoics teach us, a well-examined life isn't just a life of clarity, it's a life of purpose. So tonight, before you sleep, take a moment to reflect, what did I do well? What could I improve, and how will I strive to grow tomorrow? The answers might surprise you and set you on a path toward a calmer, more intentional mind. How often do we find ourselves tangled in the stories we tell ourselves about what's happening, rather than focusing on what's actually in front of us? Maybe a colleague doesn't respond to your email, and you immediately assume they're ignoring you out of spite. Or your partner seems quieter than usual, and your mind starts racing. Are they upset with me? Did I do something wrong? Without realizing it, we add layers of emotional interpretation to situations, turning simple events into complex narratives that create unnecessary stress and mental clutter. This is precisely what the Stoics sought to avoid through the powerful practice of objective perception. Objective perception is the art of seeing things as they truly are, nothing more, nothing less. It's about stripping away the emotional baggage we instinctively attach to events and focusing purely on the facts. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. The idea is simple. Most of the turmoil we feel doesn't come from the events themselves, but from the stories we create around them. By training ourselves to see things objectively, we can reduce that turmoil and approach life with greater clarity and composure. Let's use a modern example to illustrate this. Imagine you're in the workplace, navigating a classic case of office politics. Perhaps a colleague was short with you in a meeting or skipped over your suggestion. It's easy to let your thoughts spiral. They have it out for me. They're trying to make me look bad in front of the team. I'll never get the recognition I deserve. These thoughts are natural, but they're also assumptions, emotional narratives layered onto the actual event. The Stoic practice of objective perception challenges us to step back and ask, what are the facts? In this scenario, the fact might simply be, my colleague didn't acknowledge my idea. That's it. Everything else, whether they were intentionally dismissive, whether it reflects poorly on you, or whether it means anything at all, is your interpretation, not reality. When you strip away the emotional narrative, the situation becomes less personal and therefore less distressing. From this neutral position, you can respond in a way that aligns with reason and your values. Maybe you decide to address the oversight politely with your colleague later, or maybe you recognize that it wasn't a big deal and let it go entirely. Either way, you've avoided unnecessary stress and freed your mind from the clutter of overthinking. The same principle applies to personal relationships. Suppose you text a friend and they don't reply for hours. The initial reaction might be frustration or hurt. They're ignoring me, I must have upset them. But if you apply objective perception, you might instead acknowledge the simple fact, they haven't responded yet. That's all you truly know. Maybe they're busy, maybe they haven't seen the message, or maybe they're overwhelmed with their own concerns. None of those possibilities are about you. By focusing on the facts rather than your assumptions, you avoid jumping to conclusions and creating emotional turmoil where there might not need to be any. At its core, the practice of objective perception is about gaining mental clarity. When you learn to separate what is from what you imagine or assume, you reduce anxiety, frustration, and unnecessary conflict. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending not to care. It means recognizing that emotions are often reactions to the stories we create, not to the events themselves. And when you see things as they truly are, you give yourself the freedom to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. The next time you find yourself feeling overwhelmed or upset about a situation, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, what are the facts here? What do I know for certain? And what am I adding to the situation with my interpretation? Practice stripping away the emotional narrative, even just for a moment, and notice how much lighter your mind feels. As the Stoics remind us, the truth is often simple, and in simplicity we find peace. In a world that seems to prize busyness and accumulation, the idea of simplicity can feel almost revolutionary. Yet, for the Stoics, simplicity wasn't just a preference, it was a guiding principle for living a clear and meaningful life. They taught that the more complicated and cluttered our lives become, whether in our schedules, possessions, or even our thoughts, the harder it is to focus on what truly matters. Simplicity, then, is not just about cutting back, it's about creating space for clarity, purpose, and peace. Let's start with something we all experience: an overloaded schedule. How often do you find yourself rushing from one task to the next with barely any time to breathe? Meetings, errands, social obligations. It can feel like we're stuck in an endless loop of doing with no time for being. This kind of busyness not only drains our energy but also clouds our thinking, leaving us stressed, distracted, and unable to focus on what's most important. The Stoics would remind us to ask a simple question: how much of what I'm doing right now truly aligns with my values? Take an honest look at your calendar. Are there commitments you've said yes to out of obligation or habit rather than genuine intention? Simplifying your schedule doesn't mean abandoning responsibilities, but it does mean being more deliberate about how you spend your time. Try removing just one non-essential task or event this week. Notice how much lighter you feel when there's a little more space in your day. that space isn't just physical, it's mental. It gives you room to think, to reflect, and to focus on what actually matters. Simplicity also extends to our physical environment. Imagine walking into a kitchen with cluttered countertops, stacks of mail, and overflowing dishes in the sink. Just being in that space feels chaotic, doesn't it? Now imagine the same kitchen, but this time it's clear and organized. Only the essentials are visible and everything has its place. That sense of calm you feel isn't coincidental. Our surroundings have a direct impact on our mental state. Cluttered spaces often lead to cluttered minds. The Stoics encouraged keeping life simple so that physical possessions wouldn't distract from inner peace. Seneca advised, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress. While he was referring to living modestly to prepare for hardship, the lesson applies to possessions too. We often think we need more than we truly do. Start by decluttering one area of your life, your desk, your closet, or even your digital space like your phone or inbox. Notice how letting go of unnecessary items creates not just physical order but mental clarity as well. And simplicity isn't just about materials or schedules, it applies to your thoughts too. How often do we overcomplicate situations in our minds, overthinking every tiny detail or creating unnecessary drama? The Stoics would remind us to focus on the essentials. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about breaking things down into their simplest components. If you're feeling overwhelmed, try asking yourself, what's the next step I need to take? Instead of trying to solve everything at once, focus on one clear, simple action. It's amazing how this can settle your mind. Simplicity doesn't mean deprivation. It doesn't mean living with nothing or abandoning joy. Instead, it's about subtracting the distractions that keep you from seeing what's already meaningful in your life. By simplifying your schedule, your surroundings, and even your thinking, you create a life that feels lighter, clearer, and more aligned with what truly matters. So, as you go about your day, pause and ask, what can I simplify? Whether it's saying no to a commitment, clearing out a cluttered drawer, or quieting an overcomplicated thought, each small act of simplicity is a step toward mental freedom. And as the Stoics remind us, a simple life is often a more intentional and fulfilling one. Adversity is an inevitable part of life. No matter how much we plan, how carefully we tread, or how fortunate we may seem, challenges and hardships will find us. When they do, it's easy for fear, doubt, and negativity to take over, filling our minds with mental clutter that leaves us feeling paralyzed and overwhelmed. But Stoicism offers a different perspective, one that doesn't shy away from hardship, but instead sees it as an opportunity to cultivate strength, clarity, and resilience. For the Stoics, resilience wasn't just about enduring adversity. It was about transforming it into fuel for growth. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often reflected on the nature of hardship and how it shapes the human spirit. He wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." To Seneca, adversity was not something to avoid or resist, but something to embrace with dignity and composure. Why? Because it's through enduring challenges that we become stronger. Much like a muscle that grows through resistance, our minds become more resilient when they're tested. Without obstacles, we miss the opportunity to develop the inner strength needed to navigate life's uncertainties. So, how does Stoicism teach us to build this kind of resilience, and how can it help detox the mind of fears and doubts? It begins with perception. The Stoics understood that while we may not control what happens to us, we control how we interpret and respond to it. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When adversity strikes, the Stoic approach is to pause and ask, Is this truly as bad as it seems? What part of this is within my control? By shifting focus from the problem itself to how you can respond, you reclaim your mental energy, clearing away the fear and helplessness that often accompany hardship. Consider a modern example. Let's say you've lost a job, a situation that understandably brings stress, fear, and uncertainty. The immediate reaction might be panic. What am I going to do? Will I ever recover from this? Stoicism invites us to take a step back and reframe. Instead of seeing the event as an insurmountable failure, ask, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use this time to pivot or grow? By focusing on what's within your control, upskilling, seeking new opportunities, or even reflecting on what you truly want in a career, you shift your perspective from victimhood to empowerment. The job loss doesn't define you, how you respond to it does. Another cornerstone of building resilience in Stoicism is the practice of voluntary hardship, which we touched on earlier. By occasionally placing yourself in uncomfortable situations, whether it's fasting, limiting luxuries, or taking on a challenging task, you train your mind to endure discomfort with grace. This practice not only builds resilience but also reduces the fear of future hardships. When you've already proven to yourself that you can thrive without comfort, the unknown becomes far less intimidating. But perhaps the most profound lesson the Stoics offer on resilience is the idea of enduring hardship with dignity. Seneca often emphasized the importance of facing challenges without complaint or bitterness. He said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." This doesn't mean pretending that adversity isn't painful or pretending to enjoy it. Rather, it's about carrying yourself with composure, knowing that every challenge contributes to your growth. Think of it as a kind of mental detox, not allowing fear, anger, or self-pity to take root in your mind, but instead focusing on how the experience can shape you for the better. Ultimately, cultivating resilience is about building a kind of mental armor, not to shut out the world, but to protect your inner peace when life gets tough. The more resilient you become, the less space fear and doubt can occupy in your mind. You're no longer consumed by what if or why me. Instead, you face challenges with a clear, steady mindset, trusting in your ability to adapt and overcome. So, the next time adversity knocks on your door, pause and remind yourself of the Stoic wisdom. Hardships are not obstacles, they're opportunities. Opportunities to grow stronger, to refine your character, and to build the kind of inner resilience that makes you not just survive life's storms, but thrive within them. Let's tap into one of the most profound ideas in Stoic philosophy, aligning with nature. At first glance, you might wonder what that really means. Are we supposed to spend more time in forests or work on our gardening skills? Not quite. For the Stoics, nature didn't just refer to the natural world, though they certainly appreciated it. It also referred to the fundamental order of the universe, the way life unfolds, and the natural flow of events. Aligning with nature meant living in harmony with these larger truths, rather than fighting against them. It's a practice that brings incredible mental clarity by reducing resistance and fostering acceptance. Marcus Aurelius captured this beautifully when he wrote, "Nature of the universe has no evil in it, it is impartial, and if you direct your views rightly, you will find this to be so." The Stoics believed that much of our mental clutter, our stress, frustration, and inner turmoil comes from resisting the natural flow of life. We cling to how we think things should be, rather than accepting how they are. By aligning yourself with the natural order, you free your mind from the exhausting battle of trying to control the uncontrollable. Think about how often we struggle against reality. We wish for circumstances to be different. Why did this happen to me? Why can't things go the way I planned? We resist inevitable aspects of life, such as change, loss, or setbacks, as if we could somehow veto the laws of nature. But this resistance doesn't change the situation, it only amplifies our suffering. Imagine trying to paddle upstream against a strong current. The harder you fight, the more energy you waste and the more frustrated you become. Accepting the natural flow of life is like turning the boat around and letting the current carry you. It's not about giving up. It's about redirecting your energy into what you can do within the flow, rather than exhausting yourself trying to fight it. Take, for example, the concept of change, which is a fundamental truth of nature. Seasons change, people grow, circumstances shift, and nothing stays the same forever. Yet, how often do we resist this? Maybe you're holding onto a relationship that has naturally run its course, or you're struggling to accept a career change that feels forced upon you. The Stoics would advise us to stop resisting and instead embrace change as an essential part of life's rhythm. Epictetus once said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and you will go on well." In other words, when we align with the natural flow of life, we find peace not because everything goes our way, but because we stop demanding that it should. Another way to think about aligning with nature is by understanding your own role within the greater whole. The Stoics believed that humans are a part of nature, not separate from it, and that we each have a unique role to fulfill. Just as a tree grows toward the sun or a river flows to the ocean, our lives are guided by the same natural principles. When you accept this, you can let go of the mental clutter that comes from comparing yourself to others or trying to live according to someone else's path. Instead, you focus on fulfilling your own role with integrity and purpose, trusting that it fits within the larger order of things. This doesn't mean passively accepting everything that happens or abandoning effort. The Stoics weren't fatalists. They believed in taking action, courageous, intentional action, but only in areas where effort aligns with natural law. For example, you can work hard to nurture a friendship, but you can't force someone to stay in your life. You can prepare diligently for a job interview, but you can't control the outcome. Aligning with nature means understanding where your influence ends and where acceptance begins. As you reflect on this, ask yourself, where in your life are you resisting the natural flow? Are you clinging to expectations or trying to control something beyond your reach? What would happen if you let go of that resistance and worked with life rather than against it? By embracing the Stoic principle of aligning with nature, you simplify your mind, reduce unnecessary struggles, and create space for clarity and peace. Life has its own rhythm, and when you learn to move with it rather than against it, you unlock a kind of freedom that no external circumstance can take away. As we come to the end of this journey, let's take a moment to reflect on the Stoic strategies we've explored and how they can transform the way we approach life. From practicing the dichotomy of control to aligning with nature, each principle offers us a practical way to clear the mental clutter that often weighs us down. We've seen how cultivating gratitude shifts our focus to abundance rather than lack. We've learned the value of cognitive detachment, allowing us to observe our thoughts without being consumed by them. And we've discovered the power of reframing adversity not as a roadblock but as an opportunity for growth and strength. These strategies remind us that the most chaotic part of life isn't what happens to us, it's how we allow it to occupy space in our minds. By embracing the teachings of the Stoics, we learn to let go of what we can't control, to face challenges with calm resolve, and to focus our energy on what truly matters. Each of these practices acts like a filter, helping us separate what deserves our attention from the endless stream of distractions and worries that don't. But here's the real question: which of these practices resonates most with you? Maybe it's the simplicity of gratitude, taking a few moments each day to appreciate what you already have. Or perhaps it's the clarity of the dichotomy of control, helping you focus on what's truly within your power. Each strategy offers something unique, and the beauty of Stoicism lies in how adaptable it is to your own life. These are not rigid rules but guiding principles that meet you where you are and help you move closer to a calmer, clearer mind. So, here's my challenge to you. Choose just one of these strategies and apply it to your daily life. Whether it's journaling to reflect on your day, practicing voluntary discomfort to build resilience, or embracing simple moments of silence, commit to trying it for the next week. See how it feels, how it changes your perspective, and what impact it has on your mental clarity. It doesn't have to be perfect. The key is to take that first step toward living with intention. I want to leave you with a quote from Marcus Aurelius, one that captures the essence of everything we've discussed. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. These words remind us that the path to a tranquil, clear mind is not something we find outside ourselves. It's something we cultivate within. By mastering our thoughts, our responses, and our focus, we reclaim our peace and build a life that feels lighter and more meaningful. If you found value in these lessons, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. Which Stoic strategy are you most excited to try? How do you think it could help you detox your mind? Let's spark a conversation and learn from each other's experiences. And if you want to dive deeper into Stoic philosophy and its modern-day applications, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Together, we can continue exploring how this ancient wisdom can bring clarity, calm, and purpose to our lives. Thank you for joining me on this journey. The first step toward a clearer, more intentional mind starts